Have you ever seen someone get laughed at by an entire room, only to leave that same room in complete silence? What if I told you that a billionaire CEO once bet $1 million that a struggling single father couldn't repair a broken private jet, and less than 24 hours later, everyone watching wished they had never doubted him? Stay with me until the end, because the story isn't really about money, airplanes, or billionaires. It's about determination, dignity, and the power of refusing to quit when the world has already decided you've lost. And before we begin, if stories like this inspire you, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Every story we share carries a message that might change someone's life. And today's story is one you'll never forget. The crowd inside Skerich Aviation's massive hangar buzzed with excitement. Mechanics, engineers, executive investors, and journalists filled every corner of the building. In the center stood a sleek private jet worth nearly $40 million. The aircraft had become famous for all the wrong reasons. For 6 months, dozens of elite engineers had tried to solve a mysterious failure buried somewhere deep within its systems. Every repair attempt ended the same way. Failure. The company had spent millions. Experts flew in from around the world. Nothing worked. And standing beside the jet with a confident smile was the company's CEO, Richard Hawthorne. Richard wasn't just wealthy. He was known for being ruthless. To him, success proved value. Failure proved weakness. And on that particular afternoon, he was preparing to make a spectacle. He grabbed the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced. The room grew quiet. For 6 months, the best minds in aviation have failed to repair this aircraft. So today, I'm offering a challenge. People exchanged curious looks. Richard continued, $1 million to anyone who can fix it. The crowd applauded. Then he added something that changed everything. But let's be realistic. A smirk appeared on his face. The people qualified for this challenge are already standing in this room. More laughter followed. Then a voice emerged from the back. "I'd like to try." The crowd turned. Standing near the hangar entrance was a man wearing worn-out work boots, faded jeans, and a stained mechanic's jacket. His name was Daniel Carter. Nobody recognized him. His clothes certainly didn't suggest he belonged among executives and aerospace specialists. Several people laughed. Richard looked him up and down. "And who are you?" Daniel swallowed. "Aircraft mechanic." A few engineers chuckled. Richard raised an eyebrow. "Where do you work?" Daniel hesitated. "I don't right now." The room erupted with laughter. An unemployed mechanic, competing against world-class aerospace engineers. The idea seemed ridiculous. Richard smiled. This should be entertaining. But Daniel wasn't embarrassed. He simply stood there quietly, because nobody in that room knew what he had already survived. 3 years earlier, Daniel had a stable job, a modest home, a loving wife named Emma, and a 6-year-old daughter named Lily. Life wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Then tragedy arrived without warning. Emma was diagnosed with a rare illness. Within a year, she was gone. The medical bills destroyed their savings. The grief destroyed Daniel's focus. He lost his job, lost his confidence, almost lost hope. The only thing that kept him moving forward was Lily. Every morning she hugged him before school and said the same thing. "You can do anything, Daddy." Those words became the fuel that kept him alive. Daniel picked up temporary repair jobs wherever he could find them. Small airports, old hangars, private owners, anything that paid enough to keep food on the table. But despite his struggles, he possessed something many experts lacked. He listened, he observed, he respected machines, and he never stopped learning. When he heard about Skerich's famous broken jet, curiosity consumed him. For months he studied every public report he could find, every technical document, every interview, every failed repair attempt. Night after night, after Lily went to sleep, while the world assumed he was failing, Daniel was quietly preparing. Back inside the hangar, Richard crossed his arms. "So, you think you can solve a problem that defeated the best engineers in the industry?" Daniel looked directly at him. "I think I deserve a chance." The room grew quieter. Something about his confidence felt different. Richard shrugged. "Fine." More laughter. "Take a look." Daniel approached the aircraft. He didn't rush. He didn't show off. He simply listened. He walked around the jet, examined panels, studied maintenance records, checked wiring diagrams. Hours passed. Many spectators left. Others grew impatient. Richard became annoyed. You planning to fix it today? The crowd laughed again. Daniel ignored him. Instead, he climbed into the cockpit. Silence surrounded him. He closed his eyes and listened. A faint sound, barely noticeable, a tiny rhythmic click. Most people would never hear it. Daniel smiled. Then he asked for a maintenance ladder. The engineers exchanged puzzled looks. He moved to a rarely inspected section near the rear electrical systems. Another hour passed. Then another. Finally, he stepped down. Power it up. Richard smirked. That's it. Daniel nodded. An engineer activated the systems. The room held its breath. Normally, warning lights appeared immediately. This time, nothing. The systems remained stable. People stared, confused. Another test began. Then another. Then another. Every result came back perfect. The aircraft was functioning. Completely. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The impossible had happened. The jet was fixed. The same experts who had worked for months stood frozen. Richard's smile disappeared. His face turned pale. One engineer finally broke the silence. How? Everyone leaned forward. Daniel explained. A microscopic manufacturing defect hidden behind a protective panel had caused an intermittent signal failure. The defect was so rare that most engineers never considered it. While everyone focused on complex systems, Daniel searched for the simplest possibility. And he found it. The room exploded into applause. But the most powerful moment came next. Richard slowly approached. His expression had changed. For the first time all day, there was no arrogance, only disbelief. You actually did it. Daniel nodded. Richard handed him a check for $1 million. The crowd cheered. Reporters rushed forward. Cameras flashed. But then Daniel said something nobody expected. I'm not taking it. The hangar fell silent again. Richard blinked. What? Daniel looked down at the check, then back at the CEO. I'm grateful, but that's not why I came. Nobody understood. Daniel continued. You laughed before I even touched the plane. The room became uncomfortable. You didn't bet against my skills. He paused. You bet against me? No one moved. You saw old boots and assumed I wasn't worth listening to. The silence deepened. Richard had no response. Daniel continued. My daughter taught me something after my wife died. His voice trembled. People can lose everything and still have value. Several employees lowered their eyes. Some appeared emotional. Daniel took a deep breath. I came here to prove that. Even the journalists stopped taking notes. The room was completely captivated. Then something remarkable happened. Richard looked genuinely ashamed. For years he had built an empire. But in that moment, a struggling single father taught him a lesson no business school ever could. The CEO slowly took the microphone. His voice sounded different, less confident, more human. When I created this challenge, he said quietly, I expected entertainment. He glanced toward Daniel. What I got was perspective. The room remained silent. Richard looked at the audience. How many talented people have we ignored because they didn't look successful? Nobody answered. The question hurt because everyone knew the truth. Too many. Richard turned back to Daniel. Then he did something nobody expected. He tore up the original check. Gasps echoed through the hangar. A moment later, he requested another one. When the new check arrived, the amount written on it was $2 million. The crowd erupted. Daniel stared in shock. Richard handed it over. $1 million for fixing the jet. He swallowed. And $1 million for teaching all of us a lesson. Many people in the audience wiped tears from their eyes. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. A few months later, Daniel used part of the money to create a technical training center for struggling mechanics. People who couldn't afford expensive education. Single parents. Veterans. Workers who had been overlooked. People just like him. The program grew rapidly. Hundreds enrolled. Then thousands. Careers were rebuilt. Families recovered. Dreams returned. Meanwhile, Richard became one of the center's largest supporters. The two men who once stood on opposite sides of a $1 million bet became unlikely friends. Years later, during the graduation ceremony of the center's 10th class, Daniel stood before hundreds of students. Lily sat in the front row, older now, smiling proudly. Daniel shared the lesson that changed his life. He said, "The world will often judge you before you speak." The room listened carefully. "They'll judge your clothes." He paused. "Your job." Another pause. "Your mistakes." The graduates nodded. But never let someone else's opinion become your identity. Tears filled several eyes. Daniel smiled toward Lily. Because the greatest victories belong to the people who keep showing up after everyone else has counted them out. The audience rose to their feet. Applause thundered through the hall. And among the people standing and clapping the loudest was Richard Hawthorne, the CEO who once bet $1 million against a struggling single father. The same CEO who learned that talent doesn't always wear a suit. Wisdom doesn't always come from a corner office. And greatness often appears in the form of ordinary people carrying extraordinary burdens. So if life has knocked you down, if people have laughed at your dreams, if you've been underestimated, ignored, or overlooked, remember Daniel Carter. Remember the man who walked into a room full of experts wearing worn-out boots. The man everyone doubted. The man everyone mocked. The man who refused to quit. Because sometimes the world's loudest applause comes after its harshest rejection. And sometimes the people who seem least likely to succeed are the very ones destined to change everything. The next time someone tells you that you're not good enough, not qualified enough, or not important enough, smile, keep working, keep believing, and let your actions speak so loudly that even your critics are left speechless. Because your value was never determined by what others think of you. It was always determined by what you choose to become. And that is a lesson worth far more than $1 million.